I want to talk to you about what both me and Mike Farrell have going on. You get 45 years of recruiting experience, coaching experience in helping you get to the next level. If you go to myfootballcamps.com/D1, Mike and me do video promotion for you guys. Send it out to our whole following, which basically covers every single college coach in the country. And the guys, most importantly, that you're interested in, this is why we call it a D1 promotion, is the guys at Division I level, both FBS and FCS. Mike?
Yeah, the most recent one was Carson Rauner from Nebraska, who's kind of interesting because he doesn't get a lot of attention being in Nebraska. Obviously, he's known in Omaha, but not known around the country. And I know you already did your breakdown, and I've watched his film. I'm going to watch it one more time. And this is a kid who just makes a lot of plays on the run. I mean, his offensive line doesn't really do much for him. He's just scrambling around, but he's got a live arm. He's mobile. He's tough, and he might be a kid that a few schools have never heard of that's going to get discovered through this process. So it's over 1 million social media followers between us. And I think it's well worth it. So that's the pitch there. I'm gonna probably get to him and break it down even more over the next couple days and then promote him. But just DM either of us. My DMs are open. Are your DMs open?
Oh yeah.
So just DM us and we'll tell you more about it. Or as Coach Schumann said, myfootballcamps.com/D1. So let's delve in.
I want to talk to you. Great. All right. We're live. So it's been a week, and I think you came up with something really great. And before I talk about that, and you guys have questions about our recruiting promos, which has really taken off. We've done a bunch of really good prospects. Go to myfootballcamps.com/D1. You could also go to NUCsports.com/D1. Can't get any easier than that. But we're going to talk about, before we go any further, we're going to talk about Mike Farrell's 50 top QBs. This was put out last week and gone through the roof. A lot of people have chimed in and on this, and this is the top 50 QBs in the country as rated by Mike on college football quarterbacks. So it's really interesting. This list is I've seen a bunch of things on a bunch of these different quarterbacks. I'll have some opinions as well, but I'll let Mike lead it. Mike, welcome back, and let's go.
Yeah, it's hard to do this. I mean, these lists. This is FBS Group of Five, Power Five, and after the Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud debate in my head, and then Caleb Williams sort of being my universal three, then it gets hard. I mean, after that, it's like, what the hell? I mean, how do you have Spencer Sanders at Oklahoma State down at 38 behind Adrian Martinez, who failed at Nebraska? How do you have Jaron Hall at BYU, 34 when he's a higher draft prospect, for next season than Sam Hartman at number 8. So it's a combination of what you've done and what you can do. The biggest complaints, I mean, the number one is Quinn Ewers being on there at 27. He hasn't done anything, but I do tell people, I mean, listen, when Trevor Lawrence was entering his freshman season, I would have had him on this list. I would have had him probably higher than 27 than where Ewers is. And he wasn't guaranteed to play or start, but he was just a phenomenal talent that I'm projecting, to be in this 50. But I think the biggest issue people had probably was Anthony Richardson at 26. He's a big physical specimen, but last year I think he threw 6 touchdowns, 5 picks. He's been injured. He's never put it together on the field consistently, but he scares everybody when he is healthy. So Gators fans think he should be like top 5, and everybody else, Florida State, Miami fans especially, think he shouldn't even be on this list. But putting together something like this is fun, but we've seen all these kids numerous times. This is going to change a ton. Looking at it, give me your first impression. Like, which one, when you're going down the list, stands out to you like, whoa?
Well, I think the guy that everybody is now put into like maybe the Heisman talk, and I think that he's from New Jersey, Devin Leary, which I think is interesting that you had him on 4, and he's been getting a lot of preseason hype already. I've seen him already doing the realms of I don't know if you've seen it, but podcasts left and right because NC State is pushing him pretty hard.
Yep.
I would say that Spencer Rattler is one that could go either way, right? So he could literally, if he gets on fire like he was a couple of years ago, could be a top guy. I don't know. It depends on where his headspace is. I would say here's a couple that I see that are down the list that I thought were interesting. Beau Knicks at 48.
Yep.
So where did he transfer to again?
Oregon. So people were upset about that, and there's a tricky part here too about guys that Haynes King is 45, Jackson Dart's 24. We don't know who's starting. We don't know if Max Johnson's going to be the starter at A&M. We don't know if Jackson Dart's going to win the job at Ole Miss, and we don't know if Beau Knicks is going to be the starter. So it's kind of interesting. If Beau Knicks is the starter with all the talent around him at Oregon, he could shoot up this list, or he could be a backup.
And then, I mean, I think if he ends up being the starter, he definitely has the potential to fly up that list. Tanner Morgan, I thought was interesting at 44 because there was a lot of I thought Tanner Morgan was going to get there and then just didn't. And he should be, to me, at least in the top 20.
Yeah.
If he perform, I mean, just off of what Minnesota was starting to take that leap, and then I think last year it was kind of like they stalled a little bit. They were still good, but they relied much more on the running game, and obviously they had a excellent running back. And then the other one is Adrian Martinez, the Adrian Martinez that I'm thinking of, or is that somebody different?
No, that's the guy from Nebraska.
Nebraska, right? So where did he transfer to? Because I haven't.
He's at Kansas State now. So the reason I have him so high, he started off as a freshman at Nebraska, and he was solid. And this was a kid who was originally committed to Tennessee, and Scott Frost flipped him to Nebraska. Big recruiting get for Frost when he first got there. And he had a really good freshman season. He showed a lot of promise and then regressed every year. And this is the funny thing about a lot of these kids on here. You see Jerry Bohannon's on here as a transfer. There's other players. Just looking at the list, I'm Keaton Slovis, 35, transfer. So this is kind of like a rebirth for him. And the talent at Kansas State is underrated like crazy. Like I was watching, I was watching some film, and I was going through some of the draft prospects of the Big 12. And I kept coming back to Kansas State. I think they have more NFL talent than, NFL talent for 2023 than Oklahoma, than Texas.
Wow.
Yeah, he's going to be surrounded by a lot of talent. Now, this doesn't mean Kansas State's going to win the Big 12. It doesn't mean they're going to go to the playoff. It doesn't mean that Adrian Martinez is a Heisman winner, but he's going to be surrounded by a lot more talent. And he controversially sort of said that, and I don't know why it's controversy. Everything with Nebraska fans is a controversy, but and another transfer, Casey Thompson, who's from Texas, heading to Nebraska, he's 25 for me. So the transfer portal has sort of changed a lot of things. Cameron Ward at 23, he was at FCS level last year. It's sort of like a rebirth for Adrian Martinez. I don't think he's going to be great, but I think he's going to be much better with the talent. I mean, Deuce Vaughn's in that offense. That's going to help him exponentially. I mean, they had Wan'Dale Robinson at Nebraska before he transferred, and they didn't utilize him the right way. Kansas State knows how to utilize Deuce Vaughn, and he's going to be a big help to Adrian Martinez. But that's him. Yeah, and it's hard to keep up. Like, I have to keep up with the transfer portal on a daily basis. But as a college football fan, right, who, if you're looking at it like, okay, it's not my full-time job to cover and follow college football. I'm going to check things out, in June once and July once, but then I'm really going to dig into it in August. You look at some of these names, you're like, what the hell? Like, is that the same Adrian Martinez? Is that you're really talking about like, Jackson Dart? Wasn't he at USC?
Right.
The portal has changed everything, and it's given these kids. Tanner Morgan disappointed me to no end, right? Okay, so the COVID season, he wasn't good, regressed. And again, he had those 2 NFL caliber wide receivers in 2019, and I think that was a big part of what made him look good. And Mo Ibrahim, is a tremendous running back. Last year, they played well, but it was sort of in spite of him. He really just sort of kept them going and didn't make a lot of mistakes. Ibrahim got hurt early.
Yep.
And they still had a running back room that was so deep, and they could still pound the ball with, Falale or whatever, how you ever pronounce his name, 380-pound offensive lineman. They had the biggest offensive line in college football last year, size-wise, and they just leaned on people, pounded people. But Tanner Morgan, in 2019, I said he had a chance to be a first rounder, and a lot of people laughed at me, and they were right because he just completely regressed. But I guess same thing could have been said about Adrian Martinez his first year at Nebraska, and now he's kind of an also-ran. And Spencer Rattler, too. I mean, he was the number 1 pick in the draft last year. Heading into the season, he was the Heisman favorite. Now he got benched and transferred, and you don't know what you're going to get from him.
Yeah, and then there's a couple other, like Will Levis from Kentucky.
Another transfer.
Yep. So, I know Kentucky thinks that he's a Heisman candidate, right? And it's interesting how obviously the media departments start to push kind of that stuff out there, but I've seen a bunch of things there on him as well. And then obviously, like your top 3, I mean, maybe your top 4, I would argue, is super solid. Like those 4, Young, Stroud, Williams, and then Leary as kind of the like up and comer in that group, to me have shown and proven obviously that they belong in that top. So people could argue, a lot of other guys in the top 10, I would say, but those 4 have, really shown to be guys that belong there. Sam Hartman, maybe, statistically, like what he did at Wake Forest, I don't know what he is from a NFL draft standpoint. Like he may be a guy that makes a roster because you want him on the roster kind of thing. But as far as what his performance on the field was in Wake Forest, and I think you pointed it out, one of the toughest places to win. And he's helped. Obviously they have a fantastic head coach as well. He's done a lot with getting the right pieces in place, and that guy's won everywhere too. So he was way back when he was FCS. He won everywhere. So, but Sam Hartman definitely last year. He did some amazing things late in games too. That he definitely deserves to be in the top 10. I'm sure some people like, Wake Forest doesn't play a lot of powerhouse teams, but what they've done, and they won consistently at a high level over and over again. I'm curious to see how good they end up being this year with him, if they could sustain that,
Yeah, and he had better stats than Devin Leary. Devin Leary, 35 touchdowns, 5 picks last year, coming off of an injury the year before. Hendon Hooker, another transfer, 31 touchdowns, 3 picks. So again, looking at this, it's like, okay, between decommitments and transfers, this is crazy. So Bryce Young was originally committed to USC, and he's at Alabama. Stroud was always Ohio State. Caleb Williams is a transfer. Devin Leary always at NC State. Hooker is a transfer. Levis is a transfer. Van Dyke's always been at Miami. Hartman always been at Wake Forest. Cam Rising is a transfer from Oklahoma. Brennan Armstrong, solid. KJ Jefferson, solid. Jurkovic, transfer from Notre Dame. Then you go down to Dylan Gabriel, transfer from UCF. And then he committed to UCLA, and then he flipped to Oklahoma. Spencer Rattler, on and on. Nobody finishes what they start, and I think it's good that the portal exists because these guys are getting a chance. A lot of people felt the top 3 was locked in. And then after 3, it was a big question. A lot of people don't think Levis is 6. And I have Levis at 6 because of his arm talent. It's just rare. It's just he can do everything and anything you want with that arm of his. He's a dual threat. He throws too many picks. He tries to put it in too many tight windows, but he is just a monster. And he could have, Kentucky's a run-oriented team, so they didn't throw a lot last year, and they'll run this year. They got Chris Rodriguez back. He's just not going to put up crazy stats, but the NFL is going to look at him, and they're going to be like, wow, I got to have this kid. I saw somebody project him as the number 1 overall pick. Wouldn't shock me because of how enamored NFL people get with arms. But a first rounder wouldn't shock me at all. But the ACC, man, look at it. I mean, you got Leary, you got Van Dyke, you got Hartman, you got Armstrong, and Dracovic. 4 of the top 12 quarterbacks in the country are from the ACC, and the ACC is supposed to suck.
Well, what about there's 2 other ones I think are interesting, and one has to stay healthy because when he's healthy, he's good. Is Tua's brother? I don't even know how you say it. Tagovailoa.
Yeah, Tagovailoa, and you're right. I mean, he looks great sometimes. He looks horrible sometimes.
Right, and then the one who the jury is out. You have him at 29, which I might even argue is too high. Is DJ
Uiagalelei. I call him Uiagalelei. I know that's wrong. I will tell you, when I first met him, I was calling him Wagalele, and then he corrected me. And I still can't get his name right, and I never will. But yeah, he might not win the job. Cade Klubnik is one of my top 5 true freshman quarterbacks to watch, and that's on Twitter as well. And he could win that job. So, it's June. I thought it was fun.
Yeah,
it's going to change a ton. I'm going to do another one before the season starts because, you're going to see guys like Haynes King might be starting or he might be on the bench, Beau Knicks, Jackson Dart. I mean, and there are some teams that aren't represented here, like LSU with Jaden Daniels and Miles Brennan, simply because, I got Cade McNamara 36. He might lose the job to J.J. McCarthy. It's going to change a lot. Tua and DJ – Talia is like, he's a shorter, frumpier version than his brother, but he's got a cannon, and his brother's arm, Tua, is weak. And the fact that dude was drafted 5th overall in the NFL is hilarious to me. No offense to him, but the fact that, the stats he put up at Alabama with those great wide receivers. I mean, remember Devontae Smith was the 3rd wide receiver on Tua's best team. But how do you slip through the NFL draft with no arm? So now you see Tyreek Hill has moved from the Chiefs to the Dolphins, and every day he's coming out with some sort of dumb quote about how good Tua is. And that means Tua sucks because, the term,
you try to build the confidence up.
I think thou protest too much or whatever it is like, if you try to explain yourself too much, then there's a problem. This is a situation where he's hyping him up too much. And he said he was more accurate than Mahomes and all this other dumb stuff. Talia doesn't really, to me, have a pro future. He's legit 5'11", and he's not overly athletic, but he has a bigger arm. But Maryland fans were upset by that one. Everybody's upset about everything. Peyton Thorne being 30 behind DJ. Statistically, Peyton Thorne had a very good year last year, was very efficient with the football. And, how do you put him behind a guy who sucked all year and might lose his job? I don't know. It's ceiling wise. Like if DJ puts it together, he's a first rounder. If Peyton Thorne puts it together, he's still a 3rd round guy.
Did anyone complain about Stetson?
Yeah. The mailman, they call him. And, Georgia fans were like, listen, he won a national championship. How is he 20? And this isn't about winning football games. And we all know why Georgia won last year. It was the defense. And Stetson Bennett is a good story, and he did a good job. But, if that defense weren't so great, they wouldn't have, won it all. So, yeah. Well, I will tell you this. Looking down this list, out of 50, there's maybe 15 quarterbacks that weren't complained about. One is Bryce Young, because you never complain about the top guy, right? Well, I guess some people said Stroud should be one. So he is somebody that was complained about. Some just don't have the fan base where people care, like Dorian Thompson-Robinson, UCLA fans, you just don't hear from them. But everybody else was bitched about. I mean, if you could just pick a name, just Sean Clifford, 41. Oh my God. Everybody bitched about that because he is just average and he might not win that job. And Jake Haener, 40, Fresno State. Oh my God, he should be way higher. That's what's fun about it. I didn't put this list together so that everybody could agree with me. I put it together to hear some opinions on people. I will tell you this, though, and I did tweet this out. Okay, this thing, engagement-wise, I don't even know how many, comments there were on it and tweets. It was just, it blew up. It made me feel really, really smart about myself because some of the people who are just blind fans are so ignorant when it comes to anything in life aside from their team. It made me feel good about myself because I'm like, Notre Dame fans saying Tyler Buckner should be top 10. Okay, you're an idiot. Like, he hasn't done anything. But then they come back and then they make a smart point like, well, either is Quinn Ewers. And I'm like, you're right. It's just great debate. And I'm going to do running backs this week, and that'll go crazy too.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. The one thing I definitely stood out that I think overall the quarterbacks in this year's class seem to be at a higher level than last year's class.
Yes.
Just the fact that I think that you have that many guys that you can really talk about and argue for or against in their ranking means that it's a deeper class this year than it was last year. And I think draft wise, especially at the top end, these guys continue to stay where they are or improve, that's going to make the draft pretty interesting and early in the first round next year. I wanted to quickly shift, and then we'll talk about our program too. But I that Lindsay rankings I thought was interesting. I'm trying to think if I don't even know if I can pull it, but we can maybe just talk about it. And by the way, you could go to Mike Farrell Sports, M Farrell Sports, on Twitter to see that list. I'm going to do something commenting a little bit, just a short one on TikTok, just to keep the conversation going. And I'm all at Coach Schumann, but definitely give us a follow. Comment on it, because the more kind of the stuff you give Mike Farrell, you comment on, the more he'll be able to do more stuff exactly to what you guys want to talk about. I think that's important.
I mean, right now I'm a poor man making no money, putting out stuff for free that everybody's entertained by. But eventually, I'm going to need to get a job and pay bills. And that'll be less fun stuff for you guys to yell about if I have to do that. So support the website and support our program, which we'll talk about in a second. But Lindy's, obviously Alabama 1, Ohio State 2. And then you can start arguing because Georgia's 3. They lost so much on defense. We'll see. Clemson's 4. Texas A&M up to 8, 4. I mean, come on. And Utah 7. Utah, I think, is probably the third best team in the country. But it's really an interesting list, and I haven't done mine yet. But
Notre Dame at 8.
Yeah, I mean, they lost. Now they lost Kyle Hamilton, but they replaced him with Brandon Joseph. But they don't have a settled quarterback. They lost their best running back. I don't know, replacing a legendary coach. Oklahoma 10. I get it. I do, but they're replacing the coach. And so there's so many interesting aspects to this, whereas some of these teams that are ranked lower are the ones that we're going to be talking about, the Wake Forest of the world you mentioned earlier. Michigan State is extremely solid. They have to replace Kenneth Walker, but they're 20 preseason. Wisconsin 16. They got Braylon Allen. They're going to run the ball over people. NC State with Leary.
USC 22. I mean,
who was 22?
USC.
Yeah, so that's interesting because USC is like 4-8 last year, right? But now they got Caleb Williams. They got Jordan Addison. They got Dye at running back. I mean, their whole roster on offense is revamped, but their defense is still not that good. So are they going to take that leap and be a top 25 team? Are they going to go from 4-8 to 9-3? We'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Arkansas 13. I think that's I mean, are they that good? They were good last year.
I mean, they're in the West. That's hard. I mean, KJ Jefferson's good. They've got a good running game. They've got a very big offensive line. They got some defensive players coming back that are extremely good, but they're in the West. I mean, the SEC West, unless you're Alabama, you can count on 2 losses automatically. Somehow, you're going to lose to Bama and you're going to lose to someone else. And, so can you finish 13? Yeah, you can with 2 losses, but you better not lose anyplace else.
Yeah, my gut tells me that this list is going to be radically different. And who can is BYU is still independent for another year, or are they? Okay, so they may be able. Well, I didn't see their full schedule, but I don't know how many powerhouse programs they have on there. And then what about like the independent, like one of these not independent, but a non-power 5 like the Bearcats or the Cougars? Someone's gonna go undefeated and be higher than what they're ranked.
And then you got Michigan at 6, and their schedule is so easy, right? And that's why everybody said, they're so highly ranked. The schedule is just it's Ohio State and Penn State, and that's it. But Michigan State's on there, and they're pretty good. And then you think about it, I think they have cross division with Wisconsin. I don't know, man. I mean, prior to last year, Harbaugh would lose a couple games he should have won every year. They don't have a quarterback set yet. McNamara's back. J.J. McCarthy could win the job. They lost Haskins at running back, but they're still very good there with Corum and Donovan Edwards. But, you lose Aiden Hutchinson. You lose both of your edge rushers and your fastest defensive player in Daxton Hill. I don't know. It's just – you could pick apart any list, my quarterback list. You could pick apart this list. I will tell you this. The top 2 are the top 2. Those are the 2 teams that are going to play for the national championship. Like that, you can fast forward to. And there's nobody going to stop Ohio State's offense, period. And there's nobody going to stop Alabama in any respect at all, defensively or offensively. Those are the 2 teams that are going to play for the national title.
And does Nick Saban, if he wins this year, does he keep going?
Mm-hmm.
He does. Why not? Right? Go until you can't go anymore, I guess, in his case.
Well, he's 70 and he looks better than me by far. And he's, he just continues to sort of anger himself. The Jimbo thing lit a fire under him. Next year, if he wins it all, Bryce Young will go off to the draft, and then he'll have to prove it again with Milroe or some other quarterback, and he'll find some way to piss himself off. He'll probably figure out a way that Lane Kiffin pissed him off. He'll find motivation, and they would have won it all last year had they not had injuries. That's just, I'm sorry, Georgia fans, but Alabama, losing their best wide receiver in that game, losing Mechie before that to an ACL, losing some key players early in that football game, they probably would have won the national title last year. But I think he's going to keep going. I don't know why he wouldn't. He's not going to go to the NFL, and retirement is death for a guy like Saban. What's he going to do? I mean, he could golf, but he needs that competitiveness. Ohio State is the only team up north that has a chance. I keep saying that, and I keep thinking that. The recruiting geography is so important. Southern kids don't want to go up north where it's cold and it's uncomfortable, and you can't win with speed by recruiting just the Midwest. Notre Dame's done an amazing job under Brian Kelly getting to the title game, but they got waxed. Getting to the playoff, but they got waxed by Southern teams with more speed. Ohio State's it. It's the only chance anybody. Michigan last year got to the playoff, got destroyed. Nobody has a chance to win it up north except for Ohio State. And I think this is the year that they kind of need to do it. Stroud will be gone off to the NFL after this year. Trevian Henderson. Here's a little prediction for you. Ready? Trevian Henderson had a great freshman year. If he had more year, he could be the first guy to sit out for non-COVID related reasons. Just sit out and wait for the draft. That's a prediction. And it speaks to a lot of different things, including his personality and the way he views himself and all this other stuff. That's going to happen with somebody. Maybe it's Xavier Worthy. Maybe Xavier Worthy at Texas has a great season and then sits out his junior year. And then they're eventually going to have to change it where it's going to be 2 and out for the NFL. But that's a different story. But they should win this year because they got loaded running back room, a good offensive line. The receivers are ridiculous. They lost 2 first-rounders, but they've still got Jackson Smith and Jigba. They got, Marvin Harrison Jr., Julian Fleming, Emeka Egbuka. I mean, on and on. Offensively, they should put up 50 a game. The defense wasn't good last year. That will change slightly. They don't have to be great. But this is the year Ohio State needs to win it under Ryan Day, because after that, then you've got Kyle McCord. You don't know how good he's going to be. He could be great, but you're going to have new wide receivers, new running backs. This is their year that they need to win it, I think.
I think the big thing that Ryan Day, from an X's and O standpoint, has to look at too on defense, not on offense. On offense, seems to have that down pat, is that they score so many points, even if other teams score on them in the Big Ten, it's really not a big deal. But when they get to the national championship, what I noticed is they spend way too much time with 3 linebackers in those games against the SEC teams in the last national championship game. And then they change it, but they've already put themselves behind the 8 ball. And that's one of the things that in the Big Ten, because most of those teams are more run-oriented and they're not all spread teams. So they carry maybe, I don't know if they carry 1 less DB or they just don't use them as much. And then what happens, you get into the national championship game and now you got to get one guy, maybe 2, because you may only use 1 linebacker half the time in those games, up to speed. And that linebacker who's left in there has to be able to play the run really good, because they're still going to run the ball at Alabama or and then those guys who come in as DBs to be able to cover so you can try to negate some of that speed still have to be able to tackle. It's a dilemma that they have every time. This is a northern dilemma in general, I guess, when they get to the national championship level, the playoff level, that when you have to go against the southern speed, those teams, they're in a dilemma. Do they have a DB that can tackle and cover? Because if he has to climb down for the run, but he also has got to be able to run with those slots or the tight end or whatever they're using. That's the hardest thing that I've seen on defense. I've seen them they could score points, but it's defensively to be able to stop them consistently, because I don't know if they have enough of those, that like kind of hybrid guy, you know what I mean? That guy that can do enough in each area.
Yeah, and that's been a problem for Oklahoma, in a similar manner when they get to the playoff. It's, they can put up a ton of points and they could, but eventually they're having to outscore their opponent. And, if there's a stop on defense and their offense, fizzles for 1 drive, they're in trouble. And that's how Ohio State kind of was. Now, again, they're not giving up 50 points. Oklahoma's defense was not very good when they were going to the playoff with Baker and Hurts and stuff. Ohio State traditionally has a good defense. Now traditionally the Bozas and obviously Young and those type of pass rushers and defensive backs have been great as well. They put a lot of those guys in the first round, but linebacker, not their strong suit for some reason. They can recruit them, but they're not developing them that much. And as you mentioned, you need that versatility to play these type of Southern offenses with the speed, and they spread you out. And there are teams in the Big Ten that will spread you out, and you have to deal with that. But if you want to get through the Big Ten, you got to get through, Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, Wisconsin, and Iowa, right? And those are all power running football teams that play really good defense and will physically, come after you. And then you get down, into a playoff game against a team that's just that good physically, but also has speed on the outside, and you just don't know what to do. But I do think Ohio State will, they will absolutely win a national championship under Ryan Day. I don't know if it's this year, but for some reason they're able to recruit those guys from Texas, from Florida, from Georgia, from California. The elite guys go to Ohio State and they're like, okay, I could play here. And they don't do that for as much for Notre Dame, although this year's recruiting class is great. They don't do that for Michigan. They don't do that for Penn State. It's very intriguing to me. Have we seen the last Northern National Championship in 2014 with Ohio State? I don't know. With NIL and the SEC expanding, we might have. It's something to think about.
Yeah, I think maybe the only way is if somehow some of these teams don't make the playoff in the SEC by knocking each other off, right? And and I think and it's a really good point because like when the LSU won the national championship, like they had those linebackers that could and the kind of safety guys that could run also and tackle. And I just see that's a tough position to get. That's a tough guy to get. And there's more of a plethora of them down south, and they seem to stay down south versus going up north. Now the skill guys, because right, if you're going to go to Alabama and you're going to be the third receiver and you're basically almost as good as the number one, even if you're the third guy, you're just this maybe there's a tiny difference. Well, you go over to Ohio State or you go over to another school up north, and obviously you're a starter right away. And is there a big difference between them? But it's like when you get to that like next level athlete, is that next level athlete there?
Yeah. And if he is there, you better not lose him because Isaiah Simmons was in Missouri and Clemson took him, and he was a big part of what they did. So if you have an Isaiah Simmons in your area and your recruiting footprint and you lose him, you're just not going to recover from that because the rich get richer. I mean, if they could pull kids from the Southeast and pull an Isaiah Simmons, who was kind of underrated, he was a 3-star kid and all that stuff, but turn him into what he was, who could play safety, he could play linebacker, he could play edge, any of that stuff. Vic Beasley before him was a similar athlete. You got to keep those kids. Let's talk about the program because we're getting verbose. So I'll let you talk about it first, and then I'll sort of talk about it. This could be our new promo because our old one's stale because we're talking about kids, that are progressing along and got attention. But I was too player specific in the last one, so let's talk about the program itself and not player specific.
Yeah, from a promo standpoint, listen, you're getting both myself and Mike Farrell over 1 million followers. Every major program in the country follows between the both of us, follows us. And it's not just, we talk a lot about Twitter, and we post stuff on Twitter, but this is, TikTok over 300,000 between us. You're talking Instagram, you're talking Twitter, obviously. And then you're even talking the other social media platforms that we post on. I don't know if it's dribs or drabs, but there's a lot of following. Your Facebook, for example, I say like, your Facebook has a ton of interaction, right?
Yeah.
My Facebook actually has a ton of college coaches that I'm quote unquote friends with, right? So friends with, I wish them maybe a happy Father's Day every once in a while. But they're followers of you. So when things come in, the way social media works is these things pop off based off the algorithm. Where our promos is going to pop up based off of the algorithm because this is something that they're going to be interested in. And that's a huge benefit to it. Besides the fact that we're obviously talking about what your skill set is and highlighting it from what we see on film or at camps or whatever it is you provide to us. Obviously film is the best. But and that's what you're getting which is really, really a unique thing. And it's two different types of promos. So Mike does a great job, and I'll let him talk about it, but does a great job of that voiceover over your film, breaking down each play and the things that he sees that are really, really special about you. I really talk about the general overview of the skill set, right? And it's a really good combination that is unique. There is nothing out there like. I mean, I've looked. There's a lot of companies that are doing different recruiting things here and there. There is nothing like this that is giving you the power punch that we are given. And listen, there are players that are now coming through that we know are going to be big time prospects, that are younger and older, that from these boosts getting to the front of the coach's radar is a key. And this is really, really a great way. I call it a fantastic compliment to what you're doing. Before I let Mike talk about this, what I think is great, the best thing about it of all is you could take these videos, right? When you go and reach out to coaches yourself, and you could here are two people that are respected in the industry that are talking about what you do. So, hey, if we're actually helping the recruiting coordinator's job a little bit, he can look at those specific things and say, yeah, I agree with what they're saying, or I don't agree. Like, he can look right away at those attributes that we're saying that we think are there, and they could quickly, and you know what, that helps their process too. So for college coaches, when you see this, we're helping with that job, and any help you can filtering through everything is probably a good thing, because time is always of the essence.
Yeah, and the other thing is with the portal, how important it is now to gain exposure at this level. So let's say somebody signs up for the promo and they're not a Power 5 kid, and then they might not even be a Group of 5 kid. They might be an FCS level kid. With the promo, what's happening across college football, staffs are being, broadened. There's more and more people in every staff focusing on different things. So you got recruiting people, you got portal people, you got combination, you got player personnel managers, you got, whatever, general managers, whatever you want to call it. And they'll note stuff, so if a kid's getting a promo through us, right, and might put a little note, and then a couple years later, that kid's coming from FCS and he's in the portal, and it rings a bell, or they look him up in their system and they're like, oh yeah, this was a kid that, we promoted. We didn't feel he was our level at that time, but we liked him. We just felt FCS was a place for him. Let's take a look at him now. And 2 years later, he's grown, he's got bigger, he's stronger, he's played well at the FCS level for a couple of years. They're going to remember you more. And the other part of it too is, I've been doing this forever, and I've always seen these companies that do it. You don't know who the hell they are. You never heard of them. This is Jimmy Schwartz from blah, 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 right? Who the hell is Jimmy Schwartz? I don't know who that is, right? I've never heard of him before in my life. And he's going to promote me to get a college football scholarship. At least you've heard of us. And that's kind of important because, with that comes respect and comes, I've had big, I won't say what conference, but I kind of just did, but I just said big. I won't say which one. I've had coaches recently reach out to me and say, hey, thanks for the kind words, or you're doing a great job. I've had coaches text me recently and say, what the hell was that article you just wrote? That sucked, because it was critical of their program. They're paying attention. That's the thing. And they're not paying attention to these other guys too. And I also find myself kind of going back to check on these guys. I don't know why. This is something when I was, at that other company forever, if an email came through about a kid that didn't have offers, I didn't care. Just life. I didn't have time to care because I was so focused on the 5s and 4s and all this other stuff. Now it's kind of personal. Like, you've purchased a program from me. I kind of care about where you end up now. And before I didn't. That didn't make me a jerk. It just wasn't my job before. Now it's kind of like, hey, I'm checking in. What's going on? Well, I got a couple FCS offers. It's still not what I want, but it's helped. Or, I got the offer that I wanted. This is great. And that's kind of like, I just find myself overly involved. It's not like a situation where we do the promo, we put it out there and we forget about it. I've unfortunately invested in this in my head, and it takes up a lot of my time, but I think that's good sales point for the promo.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And there's a bunch of guys that are emerging right now, and I just think it's a great program. It's a unique program. Look, time invested by myself and you, the years invested in the experience. I mean, that's what you need. You need the experience, and there are companies that have been doing it for a long time. But do you get Mike Farrell, Dave Schumann? No, you get some guy who just got out of college,
Never heard of
who
those.
made right, and I laugh at some of the I and you may have seen it, my because of some of the algorithm stuff, but I've seen like some of these guys who are still in college, okay, or like at D3 schools that players or just graduated, all of a sudden giving recruiting advice based off of what their own experience. How is that? How is that recruiting? Here's one of the things that I think you always have to be careful of. Experience is incredibly valuable in this industry, and people don't realize that. What they don't realize is that the connections and the people that you have dealt with for over all these years encompasses most of college football, not just for my own business from NUC Sports, but obviously playing and all the coaches that coached me and all their years of experience and connections and myself coaching for all those years. Those develop relationships. So it's not that someone can't be smart enough in recruiting as a young person that just came out, but they don't have the experience to understand how everything works. And I always say this, your experience as your own recruiting process, okay, and I can use myself in the same thing, is going to be very different than someone else's. The experience of years of being involved in it gives the experience that you have thousands of people that you've seen go through different recruiting experiences. And that's how you get the information to be able to help players in the right way. When guys spout off, when you're out of college, no disrespect, but like what your recruiting experience is, your recruiting experience for your particular situation. That is not like 20 different other guys' situation. And that's one of the things that both me and Mike really have a unique aspect on, where Mike has been with the 5 stars, the 4 stars, and he's had to rate them back in the days when they used to do 2. So like he had to figure out the small nuances, and people don't realize there are small nuances, right, when you're rating those players. I've seen and coached Division III players, Division II players, Division I players, and FCS players. And then I've also obviously as a player myself, have played around these guys and seen where different people fell through the cracks, and then the relationships with those college coaches. Those are all important things that you're getting. That you, the truth is, and this is just this is my opinion on it, is that the price that we charge is ridiculously low and undervalued as far as pricing wise. And that's why you should take advantage of it, because once this begins to hit the fall season and players are asking left and right when their recruiting isn't going exactly the way they want it to, we'll be inundated. And then the question is, do we charge more because of the experience that we have? So this is a great time to be able to get the information out there, promoted, and to leverage it, because once you get to the fall, every single player is going to feel like if they haven't gotten the offers they want, they are going to feel that they are recruited, and then they're desperately going to be looking. And you don't want to be in that desperate situation. You want to be proactive.
Yeah, get ahead of it. So anyways, it's fun to do also. And yeah, as you mentioned, I really do. I watch the film over and over and over again. I just do, to try to get a good feel for the player and what their strengths are and their weaknesses are. And I talk of strengths and weaknesses on the video as well, because I'm not going to just lie and say, oh my gosh, this kid's Barry Sanders. It's stupid. It's just not. It makes no sense. So, and younger kids too. Get ahead of the promotion. Get in 7th, 8th grade. Start getting promoted. You may not pan out. You may have hit a growth spurt that you're never going to hit again. You may be as good as you're going to be today in 8th grade as you will be in 12th grade. But, if you're not, if you get better, people need to notice it. So it's for the young, it's for the under-recruited as well. And I guess that's a good way to wrap it up.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time, next Monday, and we'll talk some more. Make sure you check it out, myfootballcamps.com/D1 or nucsports.com/D1. Mike's at M Farrell Sports on all social. I'm at Coach Schumann, at Coach Schumann on all social. Make sure you guys check us out. Until next time, for the Legends Live.